when I was in the service, I forget how many people the T1 killed, or how many people in a T1 killed themselves, should we say? Because normally it's either flying into the ground, there's no radar warner. So there's no, okay, if we're going to, one of the things about the red arrows that's quite interesting was whenever the red arrows have an accident, or whenever anyone has an accident, we call them accidents, they're really incidents, we know that. Whenever any Hawk T1 crashes, the service inquiry will come out and have a list of recommendations. And those recommendations are always the same. They need a voice recorder in the aircraft that records a voice. It doesn't do that in the T1. There are elements built in, never connected. There's many reasons why it doesn't do that. It needs a radar altimeter. So there's always something that's going to tell you the height above the ground that you're flying over. Doesn't have one of those. It will need a ground proximity warning system. So it knows, again, whether it's going to hit a mountain, it will tell you. Doesn't have one of those. It needs a traffic collision avoidance system, TCAS, civilian, so other aircraft, it can tell them where. Doesn't have one of those. Whereas the Hawk T2 does have all these things. So it's a lot safer an airplane, the Hawk T2, and it's a bit heavy, the Hawk T2. This being quite light, I think it's 5,400, I can't remember the exact, 5,400 kilograms, something like that. It will reach, say, 7-8G faster than any other aircraft in the Air Force. So what kills people is not the level of G necessarily they're at, because we can work that G, because we're fit as tigers and we got a target. It hurts, but it's the rate at which you get to that G.
Right.
So if I get to 9G faster than, say, a Typhoon does, or faster than most definitely, say, a GR4 that I flew did, there's more chance of me becoming unconscious as the blood rapidly drains from the brain, and I can't sustain it within the upper body. And on the Hawk T1, that does that. That aircraft gets to its G limit faster than anything else. So you do have to be respectful of her, and she is quite old now, so she does look after a lot of pilots. But you know, it's I think the Red Arrows are the only people in the country now flying that airplane.
Right.
Everyone else has stopped now. They got a bit long in the tooth.
I think we said before, there's something like, you know, it's not got anywhere near the power of, you know, an F-16 or an F-18 or something. But just like how an aerial atom hasn't got anywhere near the power of a Lamborghini, it's not just about the pure power. It's about acceleration and all sorts of different things. And in that sense, the T1 is sort of really no joke, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I chased a Typhoon on the Northern Plain when I was leaving the T1 community, and I just happened to come across a Typhoon. And the Typhoon, I was doing a beam presentation onto the Typhoon. We used to be able to do them in those days, just to find random people and try and shoot them. And when that thing saw me and it turned towards me, I realized the capabilities of that Typhoon. It is epic. The power of that thing is amazing. But I'm small and I'm light and I'm also hard to see. So you can't always see me. You can always see a Typhoon. It's big. It's the size of a tennis court. So you can have a good old fight with a Typhoon. Eventually, that thing will overpower you. Within 30 seconds, whatever. But you can still challenge it because you're small and you're light and you're nippy. And if you can fly a Hawk well, it's just a great airplane to learn on. Unfortunately, we're getting rid of them all now and staying with our Hawk T2s, which again.
Do you think that, just before we move on from this, do you think the Red Arrows will just keep flying T1s sort of, not forever, because nothing lasts forever, but for the foreseeable future? There's you haven't heard anything that they're going to start doing? Okay, cool.
Nothing to move on to, is there? We don't build anything anymore, do we? What's the last thing we built?
You did mention the GR4 there, the Tornado, which is sort of, I take it that's the thing you're closest to. Is that a way of putting it, or the thing you spent most of your career flying?
I think you're more involved with your frontline airplane more than a training airplane. You're flying your frontline airplane the whole time, whereas in training you tend to be in the back seat, students flying a lot. So when I think back to the GR, and this is the side of aviation I think I miss the most, even though it's probably the most stressful. I miss the operational tours over Iraq. I miss the red flags. I miss the maple flags, the Cope Thunders, all the exercises in North America, the European exercises, the things where you deploy as a squadron or you attach to another squadron, and you have to achieve. Because failure means you normally fly into a mountainside or something. So, and you're there with you guys and the girls on the squadron. And then we had more girls in our squadron than any other squadron in the Air Force. And you are. I'm not just saying that because it's a big thing now, isn't it? Crikey, but we just did. It's just we had lots of girls, and you take the jets out and you do the work. And that jet is one, I believe. Even when I speak to my American guys who fly A-10s and F-16s, they love that thing because it's the one thing on red flag that would always kind of get to the target somehow. And they always kind of, don't know why, the wings are always back and there's always fire coming out the back and it's always doing 600, like a stupid speeds at like 100 feet over the desert. And the Americans had a lot of respect for it. I mean, we've got a lot of respect for the Americans and what they do. Absolutely, don't get me wrong, absolutely. But everyone loves the GR4.
Yeah, so one of the things, just to say, people who might not be that familiar, is that it's a bomber, really, a bomber fighter, right? It's not a straight up fighter.
Yeah, it was designed, wasn't it, to be both.
Right.
When Panavia came out with the design, it was supposed to be this multi-role combat aircraft, MRCA.
Because the first one, the GR1s, are they're back from the 70s, is that right?
Yeah, GR1s,
Right,
GR1, GR1B, and then went into the obviously the GR4, GR1, GR1A, GR1B, GR4 was the big upgrade, which is what these are here, which gave it forward-looking infrared, removed one of the guns, and some other capabilities that it didn't have before. But there was the F3 variant, which was the ADV, Advanced Defense variant, which was interceptor, not a fighter, and that would go up, try and shoot things down, then get back again. But I never really felt people saw it. This is me as a bomber pilot saying this. And I just felt no one ever really looked at the F3 and said, wow, I want to fly that. They looked at the GR4 and they did want to fly that.
Right.
Because where you get to fly as well, I mean, you're flying low level in the valleys of Scotland, that will never get done again. Those times are gone now.
Yeah, like the Mac Loop.
Yeah, down through Wales. I mean, the whole of the UK is a playground. Was a playground. I don't know whether it's the same now. But,
again, it is a very nice looking plane, isn't it? And it sort of had it could sweep its wings back. There it is with sort of in fast mode.
Fast mode, 67, yeah. Well, 67 or 63, depending on what the size of tanks you had on the wings. We always had tanks on the wings, either the smaller or the bigger tanks. In fact, interestingly enough, one of the squadrons, 617, who were across the other side of the airfield, I was on 12, they used to fly with two big tanks. I think they were 2250 litres, I can't remember now. And there were smaller tanks, which I think were the 1500s. And what we used to do on 12 Squadron is we used to put 3 times 1500 tanks on, 2 on the wings, 1 on the body of the jet, giving us 4,500 pounds worth of fuel, 4,500 kilograms worth of fuel. Whereas 617 used to put 2 of these 2250s, which gives exactly the same amount of fuel. They used to get a lot less flight time than us because they were just bigger tanks, so the size of the tank.
Right.
And even when we had 2 of the smaller tanks on our wings, we still got more flight time than them. Now, they could only sweep their wings back to 63. We could sweep our wings back to 67, and then we're going to geek out on other details that if you're not careful. So we don't need to talk about that stuff. You know?
Okay. But it is a... Are you nostalgic about it?
Yeah, of course I am. Yeah, it's legendary, isn't it? Yeah, I do. And the thing is...
Because the RAF don't fly them anymore.
No, not anymore. Not since I went to I think it was 2018, 2019. Could be wrong. Might be a bit later than that, 2020. At Marham, I think they did the last flight at Marham. I went down to see that. That was brilliant. But yeah, everyone is. They meet up every year. I haven't been yet because I talk about things that a lot of people get annoyed about. So I just walk into a room full of half the room hating me and half the room liking what I said. So I don't go to the reunions necessarily. And I'm also a big fan of, in my life, that when something's done, here I am talking about a previous aspect of my life, but when something's done, you sort of move on and you try and do something else, which sounds ridiculous, seeing as I've got a business that teaches people to fly things like this. But no, of course I'm nostalgic. Yeah, fantastic airplane.
Well, one last thing before we start talking about the history of aviation is just a quick view of inside.
Yes.
So I take it you're couldn't be more familiar with that. That is inside the GR4. Is that right?
That's right. Definitely. I know what all that does now. It's only been 10, 15 years. Yeah.
So one thing I did want to ask you about is that before now I've talked to you about, or you've talked to me about how quite often, particularly if it's sort of a real life situation or a stressful part of a training mission or something, you're looking out all the time. You're actually flying the thing, and you have to sort of be able to just look down at your instruments and just be able to scan it sort of very, very quickly. Just quickly scan all the instruments, know exactly which one you need to keep your eye on and that sort of thing. And you say different aircraft have got more or less difficult. That's more or less difficult to do. Yeah, the scan. Yeah. Right. And so on there, if is the GR4 among the easier ones or among the more difficult? Because to an amateur like me, that's all just Greek to me. I don't know what any of it does effectively. Yeah. Is it a simple one or not? I know, like in the T1, there's not much to look at, right? No, but in the T1, there is what's called a standard NATO T. So you have the attitude indicator, which tells you whether you're climbing, descending, or it tells you what your attitude is. That's in the center on the T1. Then everything else comes off in a T shape. So the idea being in a Hawk T1, it has no head-up display. So you're pretty much glued to that main instrument in the center. And then you can move left to right to look at your speed, to look at your power, to look at your heading. That's what the NATO T does. Now, the thing about when the Hawk T2 came out, or the F5 I teach on quite a lot. The F5 has a little radar in the middle. It's a Fisher-Price radar. It's not very good. It's a targeting radar. The F5 was the Freedom Fighter in effect. So it's long. It's the one in Top Gun they use as the MiG-28 against the F-14. It's a very short, pointy thing.
But it's a good trainer because of the fact it's got a very similar cockpit to the Hawk that's laid out. With this, it's got a head-up display with it, of course, on the GR. So everything beneath the head-up display, beneath the glass or the ironwork, we call it, in effect is reversionary. So you'll be cross-checking a lot of that stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily be looking at it the whole time. We used to have to practice HUD-off approaches, what are called head-down approaches, where you turn the head-up display off and you use all that instrument. And then you've got to work your scan out. But again, you go from the main instrument, the instrument that's going to keep you alive, which is the attitude indicator. And from that, you always go to one instrument and back again, another instrument and back again, another instrument and back. So I might check my power, come back. I might check my speed, come back. I might check my heading, come back. And if my speed was off, I might go and check my power and reset a little bit, come back. But I'm always coming back to the attitude indicator because that's the thing that's going to keep me level. The engine instruments on the right-hand side, if anything's going wrong with them, on the panel on the bottom right, you'll get a caption anyway. So you don't necessarily need to scan that side of the jet. There's some utility test things on the right-hand side as well. There's some hydraulics, utility pressure gauges on there. Some other things, such bits and pieces. Yeah, so it's a big cockpit as well. You know, you put your tea on the side. You've got your ashtray there. No, it's a wide cockpit. The Hawk is not. The Hawk's like this chair here. The Hawk, I can almost feel the side of the cockpit on my shoulders. So it's just known as being a small cockpit. But this one is, you can lounge around the place.
Because the Tornado is known as, for what it is, for a sort of the type of fast jet it is, it's quite big. That you've said before, it's got a big tail.
Yes,
like a big tail on it. And I've seen other pilots say that about different fast jets, is that some of them you sit really low down, like you're in an F1 car, some of them you sit bolt upright, all sorts of different positions. So you've got a bit of room in the GR4.
Yeah, a bit of room. Birds used to bounce off it quite happily. You'd have to come home because you don't know what the bird's done. But I used to hit birds all the time. Used to get eagles in the locks in Scotland, would lift thinking we're another bird come in to attack their nest. And the last thing you'd see is a big eagle like that. And so I try and avoid those. And we used to then stop ourselves flying down those locks during nesting season so that the birds could obviously get the little babies up, helping all kinds of aviation. We're good like that.
To watch the full video, please become a premium member at lotuseaters.com.